Welcome everyone. Today with this special webinar together with Nitor about agile budgeting and planning done right, with a special underline, put your money where your mouth is. As I said, today we do it not only from Quint, but together with Nitor. The reason for this co-creation is that we are both on the endeavor of making business agility work. And one of the things we encounter is this next of our advanced topic in the market about what can you do, what is true business agility, what does it mean, especially on budgeting and planning. More on that and details later this webinar, of course. But first, let us introduce ourselves with the speakers. Rami, maybe you can start, then I take it over, and then continue. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin. So it's great to be here. So indeed, my name is Rami Sirkiä. I'm an SPCT. I come from the company called Nitor, and I'm I actually have a master degree in management accounting, and being a controller, been working on the finance for about a decade before I needed to learn what the software development is all about, what the R&D work is all about. And now in that position, I was able to build the bridge between those two functions, and hopefully I can share some learnings based on that.
Thank you, Rami. So my name is Kevin Romijn. I'm working for Quint, and I'm an SPC, active SPC at Quint, connected with different organizations, mainly in Holland, with their transition towards SAFe. And that is also basically, Rami, what I can say, is that Rami is more organized in Finland with the position and the transformation about SAFe, mainly there. And that is basically because we have this high interest in what to do next. How can we help organizations enabling business agility? And that is where our roads crossed, basically. And that we thought, well, maybe we can share our own stories in our own countries, but why not combine it, right? And that is basically why we are here. So let's see. Let's start first with a small introduction about what we are doing. So we are mainly focusing on helping organizations in their digital transformation. We have offices in 5 countries with 250 plus consultants, mainly focusing on technology, consulting, so advisory in practice, and also academy. We have a large academy approach to the market, and the combination of those 3 elements make it success work. So as I said, personally, my expertise and one of the parts is reaching digital transformation, or aiming for is bringing safe and agile at scale, working in practice, and helping organizations step forward into this business agility and reaching digital transformation. So that is small about Quint. Maybe Rami, about Nitor?
Thank you. So indeed, in Nitor we employ also about 250. We have about 30 million turnover last year in euros, and established in 2007. And also mainly a software company, a technology company. So these are the services that we run. So we run on the technology. We have a good bunch of designers, then analytics, and then the agile coaching is the kind of one domain. We have about 20 coaches doing these Lean-Agile transformations at scale, and then we also have a kind of good understanding how the kind of a digital strategy would need to be formulated through the kind of a solid knowledge about the hands-on work that we have.
So thank you, Rami. In that sense, set a little bit of the context of both our organizations, aiming at helping organizations, our clients, in reaching business agility. And before we deep dive into all the specifics about agile budgeting and planning, and also about the practicalities, and maybe how does it look like in that sense, first we take you through some the position of these discussions, where does it take place, and also what is the more foundational layer in terms of Lean Agile mindset and principles, to see where it takes this discussion next. As we are busy currently with transforming lots of organizations in reaching business agility, most of the organizations, especially the ones who are looking right now, are familiar with the current SAFe framework. Starting from the bottom with essential SAFe and working our way towards more portfolio level discussions and see, okay, how can we actually combine the execution with the strategy and have the right discussion on budgeting, on priorities, but also on long-term investments and short-term investments to see actually what are we aiming for as a technology company or a financial institute like insurance or banks or maybe hospitals. One of my most recent clients, hospital. We are, this whole discussion is going to be aiming at the competency of lean portfolio management, unsafe. And in that sense, it was because there the budget discussions is actually starting there, mainly maybe only there, in that sense. But in practice, we see, we get a little bit of an idea, okay, how to prioritize the portfolio, starting with the portfolio Kanban, working our way with WSJF, knowing our stakeholders in terms of business owners. But really, as Rami is going to talk about, one of the enablers actually to go forward in reaching business agility is understanding the basic principles of budgeting and planning, but maybe not in a traditional way, but from a more lean agile way. So we are, in terms of this framework, we are at the lean portfolio management layer. That being said, let us first remind one of the fundamentals of how to approach this discussion. As we all know right now, that scaling agile is based on the principles and practices of being lean and being agile at the same time. So lean and agile as a mindset. Understanding what it takes to have high valued products and services coming to market in the reduced amount of time or in the sustainable amount of time. But also making sure that we are in sync, we are aligned, and we understand that customer satisfaction and alignment towards this satisfaction is crucial in order to increase our market share, but also time to market, but also creating high quality services and products. So you need to understand that further along this webinar, it's very like fundamental to have an idea of what is lean and what is agile, what is the lean agile mindset. Because with a lack of lean agile mindset in practices, in changing the organization towards business agility, in our experience, it's going to be a long way. So really understanding these fundamentals is a key enabler to having understanding what is actually the budgeting and the planning kind of an idea in this world. Furthermore, if we are going to scale, we need to have this, especially with SAFe in our hands. With that in mind, we have a large, complex systems with a lot of legacy, and a lot of interdependencies. We need to have a broader aspect of how to apply how to manage successful system development. So therefore, based on those lean agile principles and values, SAFe created 10 scaling principles to really help organizations to take a leap forward in how to work with that. The ones that are highlighted here, so is the four fundamental principles that is being used at the portfolio level, but especially also which has an impact on the agile budgeting and planning. So one is taking an economic view. The fourth is build incrementally with fast integrated learning cycles. And number 9, decentralized decision making and organize around value. Just have a brief overview of all those four. Take an economic view, understanding that, like one of the understanding that every investment that we take into new initiatives is need to be understood and based on different ideas, product life cycle, product development, risk, but also investment cost, development cost. That is, we cannot take simply, we need to create an economic framework where we're based on our decisions of investment and not only thinking about the highest quality or the shortest time to market or anything. Take an economic view is a broad aspect of understanding value, but also what is our economical or more business-oriented economical framework we can use to really make the right investment at the right time. Number 4 is so build incrementally. In a scaling environment is essential not to only understand that you make the right decisions at top level in order to realize the strategy, but also make sure that it's being integrated to create this big feedback loop from bottom from agile teams to release trains to portfolio to understand. Decentralized decision making, what is the guardrails we set up in order to make product owners and product managers make the right decisions from feature level to store level. And number 10, obviously, organize around value. No business agility has been reached without organizing around value. How does it flow? And how can we benefit of those organizations, further organizations? All right. So let's start off first in the first part of about Lean Agile budgeting. But first, understand the problem. What we know is that in traditional organizations, or maybe organizations which one of you are working at, is a struggle of organizing different cost centers and different people from different kind of business units or departments or anything, collect them into some kind of project form and try to have this discussion, debates on, okay, who pays what and how many, what is the share of each, and what is the total result of what we can get. One of the discussions that takes not only weeks but sometimes months. One practical example is what I just said, is that one of my most recent client, it was a hospital, and they were trying to form some agile teams, stable agile teams in that sense, but the whole budgeting and elementary from that was decentralized from team leader to team leader, and that discussion until the point we started, until the point that we had this agile team was created. I think it took us 2.5 months just to have a little bit of an idea how slow this process is. But not only slow, it demotivates, and at the end it prohibits you from reaching the agility you want, because it's more internal organized this discussion than externally. So that's basically one of the problems that we are seeing. The struggles between different cost centers is annoying, but also lacking us from pointing the discussion towards the value and the outcome we are pointing at. So what are we looking for? We want to have a more control still of spending and budgeting, but more in the sense of connected to not only the teams organized in different elements, so resourcing budgeting, but more or less on the content. So what are we want to achieve? Let's say with a PI cadence of around 10 weeks, and that is basically what we are aiming for. That we want to have the discussion not about the budgeting that it takes only about what is to organize several amount of teams in that PI for 10 weeks, but more or less if they found out that if during the PI planning we have like 6 or 7 features being planned in that time frame, those time box of 10 weeks, then we want to have the discussion based on facts, based on actual working systems, that if we are continuing in integrating our software development or our products, and for some reason there's feedback that feature number 1 is more important than just finish feature 1 and starting off of feature 2. We have a fundamental element to make the decision that please stay with feature number 1, finish that to create higher value, and then after that has been done, we can continue to number 2. So replacing actually the discussion on the content-wise than intent of the more the process-wise in terms of who is working on what projects. One of the fundamental elements, what I just talked about, is that there is the biggest change from project cost accounting towards more like value, a new more agile kind of way in budgeting and planning, is that the basic principle of understanding that we need to create stability in the system. In complex systems where we swap team members around from team 1 to team 2 and project 1 to project 2, not only confuses them most of the time in terms of focus and commitment and quality and throughput, but also in terms of how long does it take to actually finish this, and when can I expect something. So the next coming slides in this storyline is actually, it's very important to understand that we need to have stability in the system, creating stable agile teams with responsible product owners, scrum masters and developers inside that understand that they're committed to reaching value, to creating value, And on that, when they are left alone, they are able to create high performance themselves. They are able to create a predictability on the content, so what is being received by the market or business so what can be received, but also more predictable on what is the sizing and the amount of budget we think we need to spend in order to create it in sizing. So that is a very crucial element to understand. To wrap it up a little bit on my part, there are lots of key enablers, of course, but to name three, and maybe Rami, I hope you agree, in the three key enablers that's being said here. It's having stable and dedicated teams on one hand, understanding the concept of organizing around value in terms of value streaming, for instance, what we call that about. And then at the end, budgeting and planning based on the Lean and Agile principles. That is one of the key enablers. What is your take, Rami?
Absolutely. Those are really crucial enablers, and not very easy one though, especially organizing around value is as such, it's a kind of a major effort. And just like you said, so the stable teams and organizing around value are key enablers. And then this funding is one part that really helps to achieve the value that you are going to benefit and achieve with this value stream thinking. But you need to have the Lean and Agile budgeting on top of that.
Yeah. Well, let's see what it takes, Rami. Let us go continue and see what it takes to actually achieve this.
Thank you, Kevin. Indeed, just like you said, it's actually very simple, the basic idea of this Lean Agile funding and budgeting. It's based on that stable team. So if you think about, you have stable teams, they are there. And then that's basically, you have a burn rate. They are burning the money, whether internal team or external team, it doesn't matter, they are burning money. And if you take a high cadence, for instance, a program increment, that's a fixed duration. So again, you have a fixed cost for that duration. And the only question you have is, what do they do? And that's handled through the tight backlog management. But there's a couple of things that we need to respect first. And I would like to go through those kind of a corporate behavior, enterprise behavioral topics, which help you to kind of understand why corporations do behave like they behave when it comes to the Lean and Agile funding and budgeting, and what would be the obstacles. So hopefully you are getting some ideas and insight how you can kind of pitch this new thinking, pitch these new topics, and address perhaps some of the challenges. At the end of the presentation, I will address this SAFe 5.0 Lean Portfolio Management. There's a great and really practical ways how you can manage this as part of the Lean Portfolio Management. So first, Kevin, would you kindly change me a slide? So first we need to respect the nature of the software development. We are solving problems, whether it's a software making, whether it's in R&D, we are not laying bricks. It's not repetitive work. We need to respect that there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty can be related to the how the value has been articulated. Uncertainty can be related to what is the technology that you choose to use and whether it works. And uncertainty related to the team itself, whether the team can deliver that value with those technology in that environment and given time. So there's a lot of uncertainty related, and we need to respect that. Next slide, please. There's actually little kind of a changes, and there's actually little that rules and regulations imply that why we couldn't do Lean and Agile approaches when we look at the future. So if typically it's the budgeting of the project, budgeting of the cost center, which are preventing you to do exactly the right thing. When that particular budgeting as a monetary terms is given too detailed. But there are no rules and regulations which are articulating that how should you do it. Yes, it's all company internal definitions and policies. There's a lots of rules and regulations how you should do that in history, how do you document in the history, and how the kind of real actual cost would need to be posted. But little about the future. And that gives us an opportunity to define these Lean and Agile approaches in the way that we can maintain the agility. So when the development is done in cadence, with the iterations, with the increments, and we can change the priorities. And then we need to make sure that there are no budgeting, kind of a too detailed budgeting as an impediment for us. Next slide, please. We need to respect also how the human beings actually behave. And there's neuroscience even included here. So when we are planning, we are actually removing the uncertainty. And when we are removing the uncertainty, we are then kicking off a kind of this good feeling. So the reward circuit will be kicked off. And then we are feeling good, okay, whether it's our Christmas dinner planning or whether it's a holiday trip planning, either way, those are then you get the good feeling through such a planning. And we need to respect that. In the corporations, there's a lots of roles who are doing nothing but planning. But when we talk about the lean and agile approaches, we talk about the empowerment of the teams, and then we don't want to have somebody who is using the brains and then others just executing. We would like to move the decision making where the knowledge is. Next, please. One thing that we need to respect is this kind of a detailed project management, and that's the kind of a behavior that might be an impediment. So it's up to you to kind of figure out whether this is a problem in your case. The project portfolio is typically consolidated through the very detailed project plans. But I argue that those detailed project plans, they don't really tell the whole story about the challenges, about the work itself. So there's a lots of falling in between. Lots of work is not being represented for, well, it could be sometimes a bit optimistic project plan. And then some of the work is kind of falling outside. It can be town halls, it can be trainings, it can be some kind of surprises which are not accounted for. So that's a challenge when you look at the kind of overview and trying to kind of get the big picture through the portfolio view, consolidating those very detailed project plans. It could be detailed for the long term, but when you look take a shorter period of time, you might be actually losing a lot of visibility to the work that is needed. Next, please. So much rather, we would like to move onto the right-hand picture side. So from the left hand to the right hand, where we take a next increment. So we have 8 to 12 weeks period with the program increment, and then we would like to plan all the work. So we have that stable team or team of teams, we have agile release train, multiple teams coming together, and we take all the work. So we respect their velocity much better than in the kind of a traditional project by project approach. Next, please. So when we respect the velocity, then you can avoid this kind of situation. My colleague was working in Middle America, and they started from the portfolio level, understanding and visualizing how much work there is. And they recognized there's actually 5 quarters worth of work in the work in process. So they make a Kanban, they took all the epics there, and this was the end result. And there was 4 years worth of work on the backlog. So this might be the kind of illustrating the behavior that somebody has an idea, yes, business has a need, let's throw it over the fence to the IT, and then IT will of course say yes, and then this is the end result. So this is also something that we would like to avoid. Next, please. So a couple of things that are also linked to this project kind of management model. First of all, you have this start and stop overhead. And so when you have kind of recognize the need and you accept the kind of a project plan with the budget, and then you're just trying to find the people who are actually doing it. So, and then they do something and then you let them go. So there's actually lots of overhead regarding the start and stop. So it could be that it takes 3 months before from the idea or the positive decision before you can actually have people ready to code. And that's again something that we call kind of as an overhead or waste. The business case and the related budget and the budget, so the budget and business case are linked to each other. And so if you need to change, so you learn something and you would not need to change something in the budget and the business case, different scoping or kind of altogether a different timing or cost, you always need to go back to the same original decision making, and that's also kind of slowing you down. If we think about a modern software technologies and would like to make sure that whoever are building the software, they are building a competitive advantage for the future, and you want to improve that machinery. So you actually want to make an investment to that. But you can't really do that if you are doing a project by project, because the projects are typically optimized to be as cheap as possible. So they deliver that piece of functionality and nothing else. So they seldom are funded in the way that they can improve the ways of working as such. And quite often projects are also missing a capability to deliver end to end. So they are always dependent on the SAP, the Salesforce, or some other party who is actually doing the deployment to the production. And that's again a challenge when we talk about the lean thinking. And most of all, it's typically focusing on the resource efficiency. You have certain resources that you would like to utilize as well as possible. So that's something that we would like to change. Next, Kevin, please. So where we would like to much rather go is into kind of long-lasting teams, and that's how we are kind of accelerating the teams can learn. When we take a kind of a look per certain structure, agile release train, and a certain period program increment, then we recognize that actually the cost is flat. And yes, on the long term, you want to kind of be able to change how much people and competencies you have, but it's a long term. I would argue that in a short term, you are competence limited. You can't throw in more money and assume that you are getting more velocity. So then, when we do respect that there's a stable teams, then we can also make kind of a justification that we need to invest on the test automation, continuous integration. And then that particular group of people are quite often, and the intent is that they are end-to-end capable to deliver themselves. So then again, we have a good flow. Next, please. So what is the kind of agility comes from ability to change the priority. So you learn something about the value, about the technology, about the team, and that then you can change, you can react. Now, one of the kind of challenging behavior is that the corporations typically have. So the upper picture is when you are making a portfolio decision. So you're basically making decision to fund a particular initiative once per year. And then you're kind of, this is your portfolio, these are the things that you start, and that's then a resulting kind of a queue basically. And you can't change that because you're committed. It can be committed in terms of the incentive structure for the business lead. It can be in terms of the even losing face in the worst case if you need to skip something. It can be that you're committed with the vendor agreement structure. The second alternative on the bottom part is that, okay, you are making a one-off decision. So we have a great idea. Okay, let's do that. Then a couple of months later, you have another great idea. Okay, let's do that. And then again, you have a next idea. Let's do that. But then, okay, then we exhausted all the resources, but you are still a project are running. So you kind of exhausted everything on the one-by-one decision, investment decision. In the latter part, you are never putting A against B against C, and you never have an opportunity to check against the latest information. And again, that's something that we would like to change. We would like to have a cadence-based reprioritization. So all the work will be finalized within the program increment, and then you can do a reprioritization decision. Next one, please. So one way to articulate this, that we want to separate the funding from the content, and so we respect the kind of, we want to create a capability to deliver, and i.e. we have teams, long-lasting teams, and teams are coming together as agile release train. Yes, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't be making a understanding about how much epics, for instance, would cost. Yes, we need to cost, and we need to make a conscious decision about what would be the items that we start doing. But we don't want to have that epic as a vehicle to carry the purse and the funding to the team. And if we kill the epic, then the funding would go away. And then that group of people who have just learned what is your product, what is your technical environment, and just to learn to kind of perform together, and then the team will go away. We don't want that. We just want them to do something else from the backlog. Next one, please. This is one illustration of the kind of a rolling-based kind of funding, value stream funding. So in this particular case, there's a couple of functionalities. The first one is that we have this quarterly-based funding. It can be twice per year, so kind of a duration doesn't matter, but basically it would need to be incremental. So each increment you are making a new funding decision. So some of the changes can be happening. Second is that this is rolling. So every quarter you are including one more quarter. So you are doing this upcoming 4 quarters. And then the third characteristic here is that actually we have one part which is unallocated. So we have something that it's a long-term visibility. So long lead time items can be made visible. And then if you need to keep the lights on, you have the funding for that. But then you need to be attracting end user response as well. You need to deliver some value, and then the unallocated part can be moved where the need is. And this is actually moving a lot of politics away, because it's no longer zero-sum game, but there's always a kind of unused capacity, unused allocation that can be reallocated. Next one, please. Funding, just Kevin, give us the all 5 balls there. So funding is one way to manage. Funding is one way to control. And we would like to kind of make sure that all the control mechanisms that we have are actually subject to this lean and agile approaches. So the first one is kind of a control model that we have is to manage the content through the backlog. And of course, that's what we are proposing here. The second one is the funding the value stream. So the funding the value streams, and they will fund the agile release train, they will fund the teams, and they will fund the individuals. So you have the burn rate. So that's a capability to deliver that we fund. And that's what we want as well. Then the next one is a kind of a line management. And now we kind of need to be a bit more cautious that we don't want line managers and line managers to be then imposing any work which is not being respected by the backlog itself. It could be that you have a performance management system, you have incentives, you have a balance scorecard, which is an annual base. Okay, if it's an annual base, it might not be respecting the quarterly based or PI based reprioritization. So you need to consider that one as well. You might have some project and you need to run those as a project, that's fine. But then we would like to make sure that we are fencing those people, the people who are doing the project, and we wouldn't be mixing a project priorities to the agile team priorities. Again, they would need to be respected on the backlog. So next one, please. So this is just a kind of a quick summary from the book, This is Lean. So please do read it. I'm not going to explain it through here. But the point is, when we talk quite often, the efficiency definition is one topic that you will be facing. If we think about the finance functions, so they basically have two roles. One is to make sure that the money is being spent to the right topic. Second is that the money is being spent efficiently. Okay, so how do you measure efficiency? So it's typically a utilization of the resources. So that's not respecting the lean, where we would like to first have a flow. And only then, when you have the flow efficiency being established, only then you can start increasing the resource efficiency. And that's what this book is all about. So when you are addressing the efficiency discussion, again, there's a kind of a good reading that will help you to address this particular problem. Next one. This is, again, behavioral part. So if we think about the kind of a traditional behavior, you have an idea, something would need to be started, and it's typically based on the business case. And of course, how do you get your idea being included into the annual funding and portfolio decision is to make your business case better. So how do you do your business case better? Is you put more initiatives, you put more functionalities, and you put more features. So you're basically making the business case better by making it more complex. And that's, again, just something that we don't want to have when we talk about the lean and agile. So we want to make you do it smaller and smaller and smaller. So once you're making that bigger and bigger, that means that you have more features that you've locked yourself in, because if you're killing them, then you're ruining the business case, and then the whole thing would either collapse or would need to be reapproved. So if you have more features, then you have more linkages, you have more stakeholders, you have more loose ends to be tied, and so forth. Next one, please. So much rather we go into this lean and agile approaches where we have ability to change the priorities. We can kill features, it doesn't make sense. And then we kind of have a positive cycle to moving towards more simple, and then we have a less involvement from the different stakeholders, less loose ends, less database linkages, less the kind of interactions between the systems, less APIs needed, and that's the positive. And then we can deliver faster, and when we deliver faster, then we can also reprioritize much more easier. Next one, please. This is interesting, and I encountered this with one of my clients. They have the mental model that it's top management money. it's my money and you need to apply for it. And when we think about the lean and agile with the stable team, okay, it's a kind of, if it's my money and I'm a big, it's a boss's money, then okay, how do we then fund the teams? So it is a kind of some mismatch in this thinking. The problem with the couple of practicalities was that when management was thinking it's my money, you need to apply for it, it means that there's a high correlation that the money goes where the applications are coming from. And there's a correlation to what is the quality of the application. It has nothing to do with the strategy itself. So much rather we first kind of talk about the strategy, and that's where what comes to the LPM class. So you talk about the strategy, you understand where you want to go, and then you articulate that, okay, how much would need to go to each of the value stream. So it's a top down, and that's again what we would like to achieve. Next one, please. One of the behavior with this annual portfolio decision is that on the December time, everybody who are needed to do the project plan, everybody who are needed to articulate the design and recognize the requirements, and then do a budgeting, they are really, really busy on the December. Okay, then typically on January, portfolio decisions are being made. Okay, these are the list of the initiatives that we start. Then you contact your vendor. Then the vendor will say that these are the dates who can come. And perhaps on the March you can kick it off. Then you are full speed ahead until on autumn time. Okay, so there's a couple of things that can happen. First of all, the company's top line might be softer. So you don't have so much to spare as you planned in the beginning. Or it could be that some of the project, it didn't unfold as expected, so they didn't deliver yet. And they would need to have more money, but okay, so where you're taking, because everything has been allocated already. So, okay, then you might be exhausted with the some of the project. Okay, so all the work done already, but there's no more money available, so that's basically waste. Okay, the other risk is that then towards the October, your visibility is just 2 to 3 months. And then your vendors are starting to ask, by the way, these are really good guys. I have other client for them. Can you confirm that you have a budget for the January Q1 as well? But you can't, because you need to apply for a new budget run. Next one, please. So, of course, we don't want to give a blank check, and then this kind of a blank check challenge, and kind of how do you maintain the control? How do we maintain that we are doing exactly the right thing? So please do remember 2 things, making sure that we do the right thing and then doing that efficiently. Both are nicely addressed with the SAFE and especially with the LPM, Lean Portfolio Management 5.1. This is just an illustration. Back in the times, at Nokia, we had investment buckets. So we had one bucket and allocation to paying the technical debt. And that work was prioritized by an architect. So it was a kind of a specific actions, and that was taken away from the kind of a business decision making. Another bucket that we had was kind of a future technology. So basically Horizon 3 items. In similar way, you can define lots of these kind of buckets. You can articulate how much would need to go to the maintenance or how much minimum would need to go to the new development. And these are the kind of top-down guidance that you can impose, and then the rest of the team can kind of execute this. Next one, please. Now, if I briefly illustrate how the SAFE is now addressing all of these, and this is the kind of, I have 3 slides here, and it's really nicely putting together. So first of all, guardrails are at the SAFE. So first one is about the guiding the investment by horizon. So the top management can provide this guidance and allocating how much each of the value stream would need to invest, for instance, horizon number 3. They don't need to articulate what would be the particular initiative, but they can give a kind of a proxy. Okay, this is the amount of that we need to make sure that we are kind of a future-proof. Second is about applying capacity allocation. So how much would need to go to the new initiatives, how much would need to go to the enablers, and how much is allowed to go to the maintenance, for instance, or small development, and how do you want to call it? So such a kind of a min-max ranges can be articulated as a guidance. One of the guardrails is approving significant initiatives. So when, of course, we want to have a certain freedom for the teams when they know that, okay, we need to pay the technical debt, we need to refactor the database. Okay, that's something that they know. It's not kind of a known in the portfolio level. But you can also argue that how certain levels of initiatives must go to the portfolio when it's a big one, or when you can even articulate that how much of the work would need to follow the top management or portfolio prioritization, and how much leeway you have on the team level. So such a kind of instructions can be given. And then, of course, we want the business to be engaged all the time. They need to be engaged on the portfolio management, of course, but then also on the PR planning and on the system demo, in order to learn that, okay, we invest this couple of millions for the increment, how much we are actually getting out. And we don't want them to kind of wait for the numbers to change. If they are following a monetary and revenue changes, that's typically taking a long time. We want to engage them and learn about the leading indicators. Next one, please. Lean portfolio management at SAFE, they have 3 events, and again, these are very practical way to you to kind of keep the control, keep your eyes on the ball, and define what is the ball as well. So we have a strategic portfolio review happening typically monthly, once per quarter, and then we have portfolio sync happening typically monthly, and then we have participatory budgeting, one way to articulate that what is the prioritization, do we kind of align with the work that we want to do. Actually, can you please put to the next slide there, and this is better explained. So we have the participatory budgeting indeed. So how do we kind of balance where the money goes? You basically start with the roadmap of initiatives, you articulate them as an epics, you estimate how much of the t-shirt effort there is, a kind of a cost basically, and then you are limited with the funding. So you have a portfolio funding is bit limited, then you understand how much goes to the baseline, running the service, running the business, and how much there's free for the growing the business. And any other guardrails will be respected. And then you collaborate with everybody who wants to be part of the decision making, and then end result is some kind of a budgeting change, and that's a good guidance for the remaining of the organization as well. Then coming to the last 2 slides, so what we are actually proposing here is to replace transparency replaces control. So next slide, please. Lean and Agile approach is SAFE. We provide a lots of transparency, and that we believe that is actually replacing the control. Control adverse is taking away the agility, and we want to replace that with transparency. And then in the final slide, we have a couple of key takeaways. And I'm not going to read these through, but as you have an access to this presentation, then you can read this through. So Kevin, hopefully this was a kind of a good summary of the kind of not only how to do it, but lots of practicalities kind of relating to the kind of running through the transformation, and hopefully some thinking tools for when you need to pitch this thinking in your organization.
I think so too, Rami, and it was a great story. I think what you the core of everything, and I hope that it's very interesting for the participants who are viewing currently and staying now. I think to have a little bit of an more or less that instead of we only telling what to do and how to do it, we are interested in your questions. So please join us in the live Q&A after this webinar, and to see how we can help.